So Simeon is bound in front of them just as Joseph had been bound in front of them 20 years earlier. How do we know that Joseph is showing them a mirror? Verse 21, they said to each other, obviously we were being punished for what we did to our brother. We saw his deep distress when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. That's why this trouble has come on us. But Reuben, the oldest, replied, didn't I tell you not to harm the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must account for his blood. They didn't realize that Joseph understood them because there had been an interpreter between them. And now he turned away from them and wept. Joseph wasn't happy that they were experiencing this grief. Joseph wasn't delighting in this. He wasn't looking for revenge. He wept. He didn't want them to suffer, but he did want to learn if he could trust them. He weeps. You know how they have those self-checkout stations at like Walmart and those places now? They have more of those. As a result of that, they're having increased theft. So one of the things that some of these places have done with the self-checkout stations is they've put mirrors there. Because psychologically, they've discovered that people feel guilty when they look in mirrors. I know I do. But it's the idea of, they say psychologically, there's a self-awareness that's increased when people see themselves in a mirror. And as a result, people are less apt to do things like cheat and steal if they can see themselves in a mirror. Joseph is letting them see themselves in a mirror. And all of a sudden, they're seeing themselves. There's a self-awareness. And he sees they're feeling some guilt, and that's not a bad thing. Carl Jung said, through pride, we are ever deceiving ourselves. But deep down below the surface of the average conscience, a still small voice says to us, something is out of tune. A deep voice inside of them is saying, something is out of tune. You know, the Bible is a mirror. The book of James says the Bible is a mirror that we look at. And if we see ourselves reflected in the Bible as we ought to, sometimes it tells us something's not right. You know, pain is a good thing. Pain is what keeps us from injuring ourselves or injuring ourselves more deeply. If you don't feel pain, that's not healthy. That could lead to death. And if people never feel spiritual pain, that's not a good thing. That could very well be a sign that that part of your heart is dead spiritually. We live in a world that would numb your heart. Satan wants you to feel guilt so that it's overwhelming, or numbness so you ignore it and can die. Jesus wants to redeem your guilt, which means you allow yourself to experience honestly, and then you seek his forgiveness and redemption. There's some people that just don't feel spiritual guilt like they should, and they never change. Some people never get baptized, and yet they don't feel guilty about it when they should. It's not a sign of health. It's a sign that just part of your heart has died. Is there a part of your heart that's died? Because if you really looked in the mirror of Scripture, you'd realize I need to change. But how joyful. Psalm 32 says, is the one whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. The brothers feel guilt. Joseph knows there's hope.